Once upon a time, in the quiet city of Rome, there lived a young man named Marcus. He was a student of philosophy, eager to learn but always struggling with time. No matter how hard he tried, his days slipped away like sand through his fingers. He felt overwhelmed, always running but never catching up. One evening, as he sat under the olive tree in his garden, he remembered his old teacher mentioning Seneca, the great Stoic philosopher who had written much about time. Determined to find answers, Marcus decided to write a letter to Seneca, though centuries had passed since the philosopher's death. He called his letters to Seneca, hoping that somehow the wisdom of the past could guide him in the present. Marcus began by pouring out his frustrations. "Dear Seneca," he wrote, "I never have enough time. Every day is a battle, and I always lose. How did you manage your time so well? How can I stop feeling like a slave to the clock?" He knew Seneca could not answer him directly, but as he read Seneca's works, the replies seemed to appear before his eyes, as if the philosopher himself was speaking to him. The first lesson Marcus discovered was simple but powerful. Time is the only thing we truly own. Seneca had written, "Life is long if you know how to use it." At first, Marcus did not understand. How could life be long when days passed so quickly? But then he realized Seneca was not talking about the number of years, but how we fill them. Most people waste time on things that do not matter. Endless chatter, idle entertainment, worrying about things they cannot change. Seneca called this living in distraction. Marcus thought about his own days. How many hours did he spend scrolling, gossiping, or procrastinating? He had believed he was busy, but in truth he had frittered away his time. The second lesson was about priorities. Seneca said, "If one does not know to which port one is sailing, no wind is favorable." Marcus realized he had no clear direction. He wanted to study, to write, to grow, but he had never set clear goals. Without a destination, every task seemed equally urgent, or equally unimportant. Seneca taught him to ask, what is truly essential? What brings value to life? Marcus began to write down his most important tasks each morning, focusing only on what would bring him closer to his dreams. The rest could wait. Another powerful idea Marcus found was the concept of Premeditatio malorum, or the premeditation of evils. Seneca advised imagining the worst-case scenarios in advance, not to fear them, but to prepare. Marcus had always wasted time worrying about things that never happened. What if he failed his exams? What if he never succeeded? But Seneca showed him that by accepting these possibilities beforehand, he could free himself from constant anxiety. Time spent worrying was time stolen from living. Seneca also warned against the trap of busyness. Many people, he said, fill their days with endless activity to avoid facing themselves. They run from one task to another, never stopping to ask why. Marcus saw himself in these words. He had kept himself busy to feel important, but deep down he knew much of it was meaningless. Seneca taught him the value of stillness. Even a few minutes of quiet reflection each day could bring clarity. Instead of rushing, Marcus learned to pause, to breathe, to ask himself if his actions aligned with his values. One of the hardest lessons was about mortality. Seneca often reminded his readers that life is short, and death is certain. At first this seemed grim, but Marcus came to see it as a gift. Knowing that time is limited makes it precious. Seneca wrote, "You act like mortals in all that you fear, and like immortals in all that you desire." People waste years assuming they have forever, only to regret it when it is too late. Marcus began to ask himself, if this were my last year, my last month, my last day, how would I spend it? The answer was clear. He would focus on what truly mattered, learning, loving, and living with purpose. Marcus also learned the importance of saying no, bikeu thonai. Seneca had little patience for unnecessary obligations. He believed that every yes to one thing was a no to something else. Marcus had always struggled to refuse requests, fearing he would disappoint others. But in doing so, he had disappointed himself, sacrificing his own time for the demands of others. Seneca taught him that guarding his time was not selfish. It was necessary. He began to decline invitations, distractions, and tasks that did not serve his goals. At first it was difficult, but soon he felt a new sense of freedom. The final lesson was about presence. Seneca wrote, "The greatest obstacle to living is expectancy, which hangs upon tomorrow and loses today." Marcus had always been waiting for the weekend, for the next holiday, for some future moment when life would finally begin. But Seneca showed him that life is only ever now. The past is gone, the future uncertain. All we have is this moment. Marcus started to practice being fully present in whatever he did, whether studying, walking, or talking with a friend. He noticed how much richer life felt when he was not half thinking of the next thing. As the days passed, Marcus felt a change. He was no longer racing against time, but moving with it. He still had the same hours in the day, but now they felt fuller, richer. He was not perfect. Some days he still wasted time or fell into old habits, but he no longer felt helpless. Seneca's wisdom had given him the tools to take control. One evening, under the same olive tree, Marcus wrote one last letter to Seneca. "Thank you," he wrote. "You showed me that time is not the enemy. It is the canvas. And now, at last, I am learning how to paint." He folded the letter and placed it in a small box where he kept his most important thoughts. He knew he did not need to send it. The lessons were already part of him. And so Marcus continued his journey, no longer a slave to time, but its master. He understood now that the best time management hacks were not about squeezing more into each day, but about choosing wisely, living deeply, and remembering that every moment is a gift. The wisdom of Seneca had traveled across centuries to reach him, and in embracing it, Marcus had found the secret to a life well lived. The wind rustled the leaves above him, and for the first time in a long while, Marcus felt at peace. The clock still ticked, but it no longer ruled him. He had learned the greatest lesson of all, how to truly live.